Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandham at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
It's time for Lombardi Memories, a show that takes you back in time, into January or February, to the greatest one-day spectacle in all of sports. This is the Every Other Tuesday podcast that looks back at each and every one of the 50-plus Super Bowls and tells the story of who won and why. For the fan who needs more than a box score, this podcast goes drive-by-drive, play-by-play for the most dramatic games in history. I'm your host, Tommy A. Phillips, and you can visit my website at tommyaphillips.com, where you can find all of my books. Those include Great 80s, a book that covers this Super Bowl and the next 7 of them as well. Today we have Super Bowl XVII, which was held on January 30th, 1983 at the Rose Bowl between the AFC champion Miami Dolphins and the NFC champion Washington Redskins. If you're looking for the full story of this 1982 season, pick up my Great 80s book, and you will learn more than you ever wanted to know about that game, or that year, and the rest of the 80s. As always, we have a pop quiz and then homework at the end of the episode. The pop quiz question for today is, how many teams have won the Super Bowl and finished the season with just one loss? The answer will come at the end of the podcast. 1982 is remembered for one thing, the strike. The players went on strike after the second game of the season, and 7 games ended up being canceled, 7 for each team, that is. Everyone just played 9 games, that was it. In fact, the Packers and Bears didn't even play that year, which means that the Packers-Bears rivalry is maybe the oldest, but it's not the longest running rivalry because they didn't play this season. So if you want to get into the reasons behind this strike, well, it's far too complicated for this podcast, but suffice it to say, this is not your ordinary NFL season. Now, I also want to say it is not the season where replacement players were used. That was 1987, 5 years from here. Washington Redskins went 8-1 and finished first in the NFC. This year there were no divisions. The top 8 in each conference made it to the playoffs regardless of where they played. Head coach Joe Gibbs and the Redskins lost only one game to the Dallas Cowboys 24-10 at midseason. And that was actually scheduled to be later in the season, but ended up being in the middle of the season. The Redskins gave up more than 17 points just twice the entire year. One of them was in that loss to Dallas, and the other time was in a 37-34 overtime win over Philadelphia to start the season. Otherwise, they were completely dominant all year long. They rolled past Detroit 31-7, Minnesota 21-7, and their hated rivals Dallas 31-17 to reach Super Bowl XVII. Quarterback Joe Theismann had a brilliant year, passing for over 2,000 yards in only 9 games. He threw for 13 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Running back John Riggins, the Diesel, rushed for 553 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, that wasn't so impressive, but what was impressive was his playoff performance, where he rushed for over 100 yards in all 3 NFC playoff games. Catching the ball was the fun bunch. These receivers had a patented celebration where they all jumped into the air together and gave high fives. They were led by Art Monk, who had 35 catches for 447 yards. Charlie Brown, who had 32 catches for 690 yards. And he had 8. Charlie Brown had 8 of the team's 13 touchdowns. He was the only player on the team to catch more than 1 touchdown pass in the 1982 regular season. Now, Art Monk was injured and wouldn't get to play a star role in the Super Bowl. On defense, you have players such as defensive end Dexter Manley and defensive lineman Tony McGee, who each had 6.5 sacks. Defensive backs Vernon Dean and Jarris White led the team with 3 interceptions each. But the star player of the Redskins was their kicker, Mark Moseley. Really. Because he was actually named NFL MVP. Why is that? Well, he made 20 of his 21 field goal attempts and 16 of 19 extra point attempts. Yeah, that doesn't really sound like an MVP there, but he was actually named NFL MVP by the Associated Press. So the only kicker to ever be MVP, Mark Moseley, and then he had an up and down postseason on the way to the Super Bowl, making his selection as MVP to be rather suspect. Miami Dolphins had a similarly easy season like the Redskins. Led by head coach Don Shula, they won 7 of 9 games to finish second in the AFC. Amongst these games was the infamous snowplow game at New England. The game was scoreless in the 4th quarter until a guy drove a snowplow out in order to clear out a spot for the game-winning New England kick. If you want to learn more about this game, please pick up my book, Great 80s, at great80s.com, and you can find the whole story of this game. Dolphins got revenge against the Patriots in the first round of the playoffs, beating them 28-13. They then crushed the Chargers 34-13 and got past the Jets 14-0 in the Mud Bowl in the AFC Championship game. Like the Redskins, all 3 playoff games were at home, even though Miami was only the number 2 seed. The Jets knocked out the number 1 Raiders for Miami. Miami didn't have much of a passing game. They were led by quarterbacks David Woodley and Don Strock, who between them combined for just under 1,400 yards and only 7 touchdowns, as opposed to 13 interceptions. Miami was a run-first team, counting on running back Andre Franklin to rush for 701 yards and 7 touchdowns. No player on the Miami roster had even 25 catches in 1982, including receiver Jimmy Cephalo, who was one of their main receivers. The strength of the Dolphins was in their defense, the Killer Bees, as they were called, since so many of their players' names started with the letter B. These included defensive backs Glenn Blackwood and Lau Blackwood, linebacker Bob Brzezinski, can't pronounce it, sorry, defensive ends Doug Betters and Kim Bocamper, and defensive tackle Bob Baumheier. Altogether, these Killer Bee players combined for 18.5 sacks and 6 interceptions, and that's not even including the guys who didn't have B as their names, such as defensive back Don McNeil, who had 4 interceptions to lead the team. It was Washington's high-powered offense against Miami's stout defense at the Rose Bowl. Now, this game started out with a bit of confusion. Miami called tails, and it came up tails, but referee Jerry Markbright thought it came up heads. After some discussion, the Dolphins won the toss and got to receive. They started the game with a 3-and-out, with Woodley's first pass nearly getting picked off by defensive back Mark Murphy. The Redskins got the ball back at their own 28 after the punt. Riggins ran it 3 times in a row, and he got a first down. Then Theismann threw a screen to Charlie Brown, who picked up 12 yards on the left side of the field. But then the Dolphins managed to get off the field because linebacker Ernest Roan sacked Theismann, and the Redskins had to punt it away, and they kicked it for a touchback. Running back Tony Nathan started out the new Miami drive with a 4-yard run. Woodley then looked down the right sideline, for a wide-open Jimmy Cephalo. We were talking about him. He was one of their main receiving targets, and there's a mix-up in the Washington secondary. Cephalo ends up going all the way for a 76-yard touchdown, the second longest pass in Super Bowl history at the time, behind only Jim Plunkett to Kenny King in Super Bowl XV. Kicker Uvon Salmon kicked the extra point, and Miami led 7-0. Washington then went 3-and-out. Miami got the ball back at the 37. Nathan ran for 13 yards, and Franklin pounded it twice ahead for another first down into Washington territory. But that's when Manley burst in, knocked the ball out from Woodley, and defensive tackle Dave Butts recovered it for the Redskins. The Redskins then tried a flea flicker, but Theismann threw incomplete on the play, trying that trick play. But they did end up getting in field goal range after that. Running back Clarence Harmon ran for a 7-yard gain. Theismann hit tight end Don Warren for a first down at the Miami 35. And then Riggins ran for another 7 yards, but he got stopped on third down. So the Redskins settled for a 31-yard field goal by the league MVP, Mark Mosley, and that started off the second quarter with Miami ahead 7-3. Miami defensive back Fulton Walker returned the ensuing kickoff 42 yards. Nathan took a couple carries, one for 8 yards and one up the middle for a first down. Woodley then completed to receiver Duriel Harris for another 8 yards. After Franklin picked up the first down, Woodley found Cephalo again for about 6 yards. Another pass to Harris got the Dolphins inside the red zone. Franklin picked up a first down at the 8 a few plays later, but the Miami drive died inside the 5. Von Salmon came on and kicked a 21-yard field goal to push the Dolphins' advantage to 10-3. Theismann started the next Redskin drive out with a 25-yard pass to tight end Rick Walker. Riggins ran for the next first down before hauling in a pass for about 14 yards. He then looked like he was going to pass on his next play, but he chose not to throw, and ran it for no gain. Theismann scrambled, though, to get the Redskins a first down. He got them down to the 13. Riggins ran it a couple more times, got it to the 5, whereupon Theismann hit receiver Alvin Garrett in the right side of the end zone. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. Mosley's kick tied it at 10. However, the tie score would be extremely short-lived. Fulton Walker caught the ensuing kickoff at his own 2, cut over across the field to the left sideline, sprinted down that left sideline 98 yards for a touchdown, and Miami goes back in front. Von Salmon gets the extra point. Miami goes back in front by 7. At the time, it was the longest kickoff return in Super Bowl history. The Redskins needed to get something going before the half, but after a couple of runs went nowhere, Shula called a pair of timeouts to try to get the ball back for Miami. Don Shula, their head coach, of course. So on third down, Bison managed to scramble for a first down at the 24. So now Joe Gibbs, the Washington head coach, decides he's going to go for points. So now Washington goes, hurry up. Bison throws the Warren for a short gain. Then he went with a long ball that got a pass interference flag at the 42. He then escaped pressure, found Charlie Brown for a first down at the Miami 16. Timeout Washington, their final timeout. 14 seconds left on the clock. What to do? Well, anything but what the Redskins did. I mean, you have an MVP kicker, you might as well kick the field goal, but instead they decide they're going to pass. Theismann throws it to Garrett, catches it inbounds, the clock runs out, and Washington gets 0 points out of it. 17-10 Miami at halftime. Washington went 3 and out to start the second half, with Theismann being sacked by Baumhauer on the second down play. Miami took over, and Franklin ran for about 9 yards. Woodley picked up the first down on the third down quarterback sneak. Woodley then had 2 long passes go for big gains, they almost went for big gains. Neither of them got hauled in, though, because the first went to Duriel Harris. He juggled it, but came down out of bounds, incomplete. Second one was for tight end Joe Rose, and it would have been a touchdown if it was on target, but it was off target, and Miami had a punt. Theismann started the next drive with a 7-yard pass to Warren. Riggins plowed up the middle for a first down at the 47. Garrett took a reverse to his left, and then he made a fantastic play, going 44 yards all the way down to the Miami 10, just on a reverse play. So now Theismann threw it to Warren, got him down to the 3-yard line, and on third and goal, though, he threw for Garrett, incomplete. So Mosley came on, tried a 20-yard field goal. He converted, cut the deficit to 4 points. The next 3 possessions were 3 and outs without much really going on. When Washington got the ball back the second time, Theismann threw an interception to linebacker A.J. Dewey, who had been the hero of the AFC Championship game with 3 picks. But then Woodley returned the favor. He threw an interception as well, trying to get it to Cephalo, but intercepted by Mark Murphy at the 5. Riggins ran for 9 yards, and then he picked up the first down on the next play. Then came one of the biggest plays that not as many people remember, but there actually are a lot of people who seem to remember this. Theismann throws a pass. It gets batted high into the air and is falling right down into Bokamper's arms at the goal line. So if he catches it, it's a pick 6. It's a touchdown. But Theismann gets his arms in, knocks the ball away from Bokamper, turning a pick 6 into an incomplete pass. At the end of the quarter, the Redskins trailed 17-13, but it would have been 24-13 if not for Theismann's heroic play. Theismann did end up throwing an interception later in that drive, though. No one remembers that. But it worked out like a sore punt because Lau Blackwood hauled it in at the Miami 1. So that meant whenever the Dolphins offense malfunctioned once again, the Redskins got the ball with good field position. Riggins ran it twice, getting over 100 yards for the day. And then Harmon took a third down carry to get within a yard of the first down. 4th and 1. The most famous 4th and 1 play in Super Bowl history. Don Shula called timeout to talk it over for the Dolphins, but it did no good because Gibbs defeated Shula in the Battle of Wits, and Riggins defeated Don McNeil in a different type of battle. So basically, Gibbs has tight end Clint Didier go out in motion, and McNeil ends up slipping as he's trying to follow Didier. By the time he gets back into position, Riggins takes the handoff and just runs right over him, and he can't cool him down. He's pulling by his jersey. He can't do it. Riggins goes 43 yards into the end zone. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. The Skins took a 20-17 lead. The Dolphins went 3-and-out, and little did they know they never get another chance because the Redskins would just run the ball and run off time. So using some punishing blows from Riggins, the Redskins slowly moved down the field. Riggins broke the Super Bowl record for most yards in a game, and then Harmon picked up a first down with 5 minutes to go. Couple more runs. Theismann completes a third down pass to Charlie Brown inside the 10. Now there's only 3 minutes left. Riggins then, this is something we'll never know, but he looked like he fumbled the ball at the 6-yard line and the Dolphins recovered. So Dick Enberg and Merlin Olsen both thought it had been a fumble. The replays were inconclusive, but the whistle had blown, so the ball was dead. We'll never know if Miami could have gotten that ball and would they have had a chance, but it goes to the 2-minute warning. Theismann rolls to his right, throws to Charlie Brown. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. The Skins went up by 10, and it was over. Now, Sula inserted backup quarterback Don Strock, but he completed only one pass out of his 4 attempts, and the Redskins came away with their first Super Bowl victory, 27-17. Riggins was named MVP for his record-breaking 166 rushing yards, including his 43-yard touchdown run, on another record, 38 carries. There's no doubt he was MVP of this game. It's hard to even think of who would be the second best player of the day. But if I was to pick one, I'd go with Theismann, who had a pretty good day himself despite his 2 interceptions. He still had a solid performance, and if he didn't knock down that one pass, it was curtains for Washington. But again, Riggins was the reason the Skins won, and he deserved MVP fully. Who was the MVP of the losing team? Well, that has to be Fulton Walker. He returned a kickoff 98 yards for a score. That was the longest scoring play in Super Bowl history at the time. And he ended up with 190 kickoff return yards, going for 47.5 yards per return. And his 98-yard touchdown return would remain the longest in Super Bowl history for 14 years until Desmond Howard broke it in Super Bowl XXXI. The least valuable player has to be Woodley. He had a dreadful performance, completing just 4 of his 14 pass attempts. Yes, he had 97 yards, but 76 of those came on one play. Take out that play, and he went 3 for 13 for 21 yards and an interception. That's about as bad as it gets, although Tony Eason would have something to say about that. Strock may not have done any better against this ferocious Washington defense, but Woodley failed his team in this game. It's a unfortunate situation, and the Dolphins would have to get another quarterback. Now, the biggest play of this game was obviously Riggins' 43-yard touchdown run on 4th and 1. That's the one you see in the Super Bowl highlights. If he doesn't make that first down, it's possible the Dolphins could have managed to hold the lead. I don't think they would have. I think Theismann was moving the ball well enough that the Redskins would have gotten another try later in the game. But Riggins' run won it for the Skins, who weren't giving up anything to Miami's impotent offense. Now, what was the biggest play that no one remembers? Well, I would say Theismann knocking down that pick 6 for Beaucamper that would have put the game on ice for Miami. But a lot of people do remember that play. So I have to go with Theismann's third down touchdown pass to Charlie Brown inside the 2-minute warning of the 4th quarter. If the Skins don't convert there, Mosley kicks a field goal. Redskins go up 6. Now, it's true. Miami didn't do anything in the second half, but they would have had some hope. And not only that, the Redskins would have had to kick off the Fulton Walker. Could Walker have taken one back to midfield and set up a game-winning touchdown drive by Strock? We'll never know because Theismann found Brown to ice the Redskins' victory. The best player in this game that no one remembers, well, that would be Redskins running back Clarence Harmon. Yes, he had only 40 yards, but he actually had a better yards per carry average than Riggins. He picked up a couple first downs in key situations that kept Washington drives going. It's hard to think of a player that no one remembers out of these two teams, but Harmon is the closest one to it. Okay, so it's time for homework tonight, and this one's an easy one again. I mean, there's really no other book to choose. Hail to the Redskins! Hail to the Redskins by Adam Lazarus is my pick. If you never read Lazarus, you really need to as soon as you can. He has 3 books I'm recommending for homework during this podcast. This one, 2 more in the upcoming weeks. He is a fantastic writer. I wish I was as good as him. His book goes through all 3 of the Redskins Super Bowl victories, so you can pull it out again for Super Bowls 22 and 26. Now, the Redskins finished this season with just 1 loss, being one of only 3 NFL teams to accomplish that feat while winning the Super Bowl. The others are the 1984 San Francisco 49ers and the 1985 Chicago Bears. So that's the answer to the pop quiz question. 3 teams. All other 15-win teams have come up short, and the 16-win team also came up short in the big game. Now you got to play 17 and go 16-1 for a chance at going 19-1 to join this list. Obviously, the Redskins played fewer games than the Niners and Bears, but they do get to go down in history as one of the only 3 teams to win a Super Bowl in a 1-loss season. In 2 weeks, the Redskins will try to repeat as Super Bowl champions. The only thing standing in their way of becoming a dynasty is the Los Angeles Raiders, a team who finished with only 1 loss in 1982, like the Redskins, but lost in the playoffs the second round to the Jets. Can LA rebound from that early exit and bring the City of Angels its first Super Bowl championship? Or can the Redskins repeat and usurp Ronald Reagan as the biggest dynasty in Washington? It all comes to a head in Super Bowl XVIII. If you want to read about it early, find my Great 80s book at TommyAPhillips.com or Great80s.com. Until then, so long.
We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday's Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of filmmusic.io.